Owning a Ferrari is an instant membership into an exclusive club of heroes or douchebags, depending on your point of view. Both are probably valid, but no car company has done a better job of managing its image to create a mystique. Ferrari has, IMHO, made a couple of missteps with its brand in the last few years. The Roma is both a product of those mistakes and a sign that things might be changing. Here's a change. This is a spoiler. It can and does go up and down, but there is no button to make it do so, as if to say, leave those childish antics to the Lamborghini customer. No, the Roma is a big deal because of how it looks, and not because it's pretty, but because of what those looks actually mean. I'm gonna say this quickly, and I'm not gonna bring it up again. Ferrari has a huge problem looming because the internal combustion engine is being outlawed, and I genuinely don't understand how this brand continues to exist in a world without sound. But that's a different discussion entirely. Today, I want to talk about the cars that made Ferrari's brand what it is, how those were very different from the cars that Ferrari's been making recently, and while the Roma is full of a bunch of firsts, it's actually got a lot more in common with the old cars than you'd think. Super fast history lesson. Enzo didn't give a flaming cannoli about street cars. He was a race car guy, period. His street cars existed solely because they made money to pay for racing. And he made two types of road cars, sports cars and GTs. Today, we have a hard time differentiating between the two because it's an obsolete concept. Back in the day when almost all cars sucked, GT was code for a car that didn't suck. By definition, in a Gran Turismo, you'd be able to cruise comfortably at the speed limit across an entire continent without it breaking down, overheating, or being unduly miserable. And it should have enough space in it to carry two people and their accoutrement, or as I like to call it, crap. That describes literally every car made today. Yeah, some are better than others, but it's all shades of gray. Back when the term GT was invented, there was a huge difference between a Fiat 500, which had 13 horsepower and couldn't keep up with an over-caffeinated pedestrian, and a 300 horsepower Ferrari V12, which can keep up with Autobahn traffic today. Back then, the sports car was a racing car. Sports, of course, meaning competition. If it was even street legal, it was only so that a gentleman could grin and bear the miserable drive to the nearest track and then go racing against other rich boys with a death wish. Should he survive, which was anything but a given, he would then suffer through the indignity of a drive home where a real car would await him for transportation duties. That describes literally no car made today. The closest thing we have is a Porsche 911 GT3, but that's not a race car. The race car is the GT3 Cup, and that's not street legal. Anyway, back to our dignified racer boy. When he leaves the track and gets home, if he's of sufficient means, perhaps his daily driver is a Ferrari, in which case it would have been a Ferrari GT. Which again meant nothing more than a car that didn't suck. And by the way, Enzo didn't ever drive a sports car on the street. If he actually drove himself, rather than being chauffeured, and if he actually drove one of his own cars, which was a rarity, he drove a Ferrari GT 2+2. This is then an honest Ferrari, the type that's designed to be driven every day. How do we know this? Well, it has this crooked wart. That is a radar sensor, meaning the Roma has adaptive cruise control, and it has a lane-keeping assistant, and a new 8-speed dual-clutch automatic developed for fuel economy. It comes standard with 7 years of free maintenance included. And it has a gleamingly modern cockpit, which, like every other modern car, means screens everywhere and capacitive touch controls that make you take your eyes off the road and activate constantly when you don't want them to. Even the engine start-stop button is a fake button when it should be a big red physical button. And because it's capacitive, the computer can turn it off and then the button disappears. And then the computer can decide it doesn't want to start and the button doesn't come back and then you're stuck. Anyway, the screen in front of you, wow. Bright, great contrast, great colors. That looks like a real traditional Ferrari tachometer. It's wonderful. That screen, Well, in a world where everyone's going for the thinnest possible screens, Ferrari has Velcroed on the thickest iPad ever made. But I think I know why. On the backside of it, there are these little cooling holes, and they're aimed directly at an air conditioning vent. So I bet that inside this module are the computers to run everything, and that's pretty clever engineering. But it could also age this cabin pretty quickly. I will say there's one thing about this car that will not age badly, and it's the key. It's metal, it's got leather, it smells good. This is, without question, the most elegant key of any car in production today. This is not the kind of stuff I usually feel compelled to point out in a Ferrari review. Typically, that's all about the engine, some sort of wailing lunatic that revs high enough to whip your flour into sfogliatelle. All you get here is 7,500 RPM, or, put another way, 700 RPM less than a 2005 Toyota Corolla. See what I did there? That's the numbers game. That's the kind of stuff that encourages Ferrari to make stuff not like the Roma. Quick detour, we all know who Enzo Ferrari was. The next deity in the Ferrari lineage was a man named Luca Cordero de Montezemolo. And Montezemolo took the reins of Ferrari a couple years after Enzo passed away. Montezemolo was perfect for the job. Not only did he have a long and working relationship with Enzo himself, he was not just an actual aristocratic gentleman racer I described a couple minutes ago, he was a professional racer. And he was a customer who got his ricotta handed to him in a Ferrari 348 by a Volkswagen GTI. While this, as a VW fanboy, kind of makes me giggle, it rather did not please Signore Montezemolo. He fixed that particular problem, and how? Over the next quarter century, Montezemolo was responsible for making Ferraris into the stupendous performers they've become. And he was also the architect of the Ferrari brand, turning a car into a dream. We owe Montezemolo as much for our adoration of Ferrari as Enzo himself. But protecting the brand at all cost had a cost. It meant that Ferrari could never lose a comparison test. So if there was any doubt, they would either have to decline to participate or cheat. Whatever, it worked, and Ferrari's factory was spitting out cars as quickly as it was money. Unfortunately, things that create money are an irresistible siren's call for those pesky people who love to ruin great cars. Accountants. One showed up as Montezemolo's boss, Fiat Group CEO Sergio Marchionne. Ruthless and brilliant businessman, not a car guy, and definitely not a brand guy. Long story short, all Marchionne wanted was for Ferrari to sell 85 billion cars a year. Montezemolo knew that if everyone had a Ferrari, no one would want a Ferrari. Marchionne stood his ground, said, "Yeah, we're going to make an SUV too." And Montezemolo said, "Ciao." That was 2014, and well, look at what's happened to Ferrari since. Its cars are in most ways objectively better than ever, but they have, I'm sorry to say, lost all semblance of elegance. Slats, grills, spoilers, and 600 special editions with more dollars added to their prices than substance under their skin. And now, a couple of years after Marchionne's unfortunate and very untimely death, we have an about-face with the Roma. And this time, Rome descends from California. Quick background on that, in 1999, Ferrari took control over ailing Maserati. First order of business, Ferrari engineers the new Quattroporte, which was so incredible that I can't speak about it today without aspirating on my own fluids. The second new Maserati was to be a coupe cabriolet, and once again, Ferrari did all of the engineering for it. Just as it was finished, Marchionne stepped in and took Maserati away from Ferrari, merging it with Alfa Romeo instead. He didn't like the coupe cabriolet, so he killed it. Rather than scrap all of its work, Ferrari quickly re-engineered the coupe cabriolet to be made out of aluminum instead of its original and heavy steel. It became the California, and it was hideous. Maybe it would have made a great Maserati with different skin on it, but it didn't make a great Ferrari. It didn't do the Montezemolo thing really well. It wasn't a terrific performer, and it certainly wasn't a dream car. It all got a lot better when it became the California T, looked better and was quicker, and it got better still when it became the Portofino. And now we have the Roma, a roughly coupe version of the Portofino, but in place of the Porto's pseudo-aggressive looks, it's a return to the gentleman's GT. The type of car that Enzo might want to drive or that elegant people might want to buy. Every single page of Ferrari's press material says it was designed and named after the elegance of 1960s Rome's La Dolce Vita, the sweet life. Sweet. I'm all for Italian food analogies, but why do they have to name it after an ice cream? And besides, dulce de leche is Spanish, not Italian, and it's pronounced dulce, not dolce. It plays the Montezemolo game. It's turbocharged to 612 horsepower when it really shouldn't be. It has an embarrassing nod to the gated manual transmission it should have, and would have if Ferrari hadn't gone down the performance route. Porsche learned that lesson with the last GT3, which sold 70% manual in the US, 30% worldwide, and they expect the next one to be even more manual. Are you listening, Ferrari? Ferrari is, at least once again, paying attention to the models of its glorious past, the ones that made the company so famous. And that is, in case you're wondering, why so many of us think the Roma is such a big deal. And no, I didn't forget to review the car. It's a modern car, so it has irritating technology, numb electric power steering, and turbos that give it too much power. But it's a modern Ferrari, which means that the steering is outrageously precise, the turbos don't muffle the sound, and the suspension tuning makes it feel massless. And it's beautiful and elegant. It is a real Ferrari. Okay, so you're just gonna keep the Ferrari framed out the entire time, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Action.
I'm not some rich YouTuber asking you to like and subscribe. Hey, up, keep the Ferrari out. I'm an automotive journalist asking you to like and subscribe. And that's because that's how YouTube works. If you don't click those buttons, YouTube doesn't know you liked what you've just seen and isn't gonna show you any more of it. And if you don't like what you've just seen, well, join the club. And by that, I mean the Haggerty Drivers Club, which gets you access to this award-winning magazine, as well as discounts on amazing stuff. And if you still don't like what you've seen, well, then just leave a nasty comment, because that's how the internet works. I need to go clean that up.